welcome. So, just a little political commentary for you. So, on the most recent weekly show with Jon Stewart, he mentioned something that got me thinking. He was making a joke, and he said he'd like to see a new bumper sticker. And essentially that bumper sticker said, how do we stop Democrats from learning all the wrong lessons from losing the election? And you know what? He's not wrong. And yesterday, he's in his Daily Show commentary, monologue, as well as Keith Olbermann in his podcast, they both essentially reaffirmed that message. Now, these two gentlemen have been liberal commentators in the liberal space for decades. And it's no secret that there's no love lost between the two. I think Keith Olbermann has been a little bit more open about how he just doesn't get why people like Jon Stewart. But I think in looking at what they said, as well as within the context of Maureen O'Dowd's recent op-ed piece, it'll be interesting to see the what they had to say. Because I think, Jon was onto something. And when you see what Jon said and add on top of that what Keith said yesterday, and I do see Keith as my slightly older, smarter, more mischievous brother, I think they are onto a path forward for the next election. So let us move forward. And I do recommend that you you can find Jon's monologue from yesterday on YouTube. Certainly you can find Keith Olbermann's podcast from yesterday on YouTube. You can find it also in any regular podcast space. Go read Maureen O'Dowd's op-ed piece. Or if you're somewhat more adventurous, you can watch Mika Brzezinski's dramatic reading of the entire piece. Not exactly sure again why she did that, but anyway, let's move on. And if you like what you see, what you hear, please feel free to like, subscribe, hit all the buttons, give all the likes, give all the feels. So, Keith Olbermann, his basic take-home point from his podcast yesterday was that there is no liberal counterpart to the manosphere. And he's right. He also said, and he's right about this as well, there's not even an inkling or interest in creating one. Now, you can't punch back if you're not even interested in the game. And if there's one thing that we know about the last 10 years, liberal progressives have been taking one shit ton of body punches. And they're not interested in punching back. They want to be above it all. Now, quite rightly so, he points out that current liberal voices are stale, they're flat, and they're ineffective. And case in point, one of my favorite liberal voices historically, Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Now, don't get me wrong. I've been listening to Chris Hayes for years, decades even. I like Chris Hayes. I've always liked Chris Hayes. He's smart, he's insightful, but makes a shit ton of money, wears beautiful suits, he's on MSNBC, and he went to Brown. He speaks to a particular demographic. In fact, he codes, rightly or wrongly so, but he codes and is right now the poster child for liberal intellectual elite. Throw in East Coast, and you've just hit the trifecta, baby. The point is, he might speak to me, being an academic and an East Coast liberal who taught at an East Coast liberal arts college, not that far south from Brown, actually taught at and worked for a research institute affiliated with Brown. But the point is, he doesn't speak for my buddy, a good friend of mine, who kind of owns the FedEx in town. Now, as Keith Olbermann points out, and as Dems and Libs are pointing out, but again, this is an idea that was crystallized in my brain by Jon Stewart. The Dems are looking for lessons in all the wrong places. They're saying, we lost the working class vote, we lost the working class vote. Well, if you call it the working class vote, then yeah, you're missing the point. You didn't lose the working class vote. You lost the non-college educated vote. So, because that's who you lost. And Chris Hayes doesn't talk to those people. He talks to me, a college educated person with a PhD. And working class is a word that Dems use instead of using non-college educated. It is a problem with language. And yes, Dems have a problem with language. We'll get into this a little later, but that's not what woke is. So, rightly so, that's one lesson here. Looking for lessons in all the wrong places. It's not working class. It's non-college educated. And there is no, on the liberal side, voice who can speak to non-college educated Dems, liberals. We lost that. Lost it decades ago. As Keith points out, he's the liberal equivalent of Joe Rogan. Now, as Keith also points out in his podcast, the only media that even comes remotely close to punching back at the manosphere are the Never Trumpers, the people who started the Bulwark, the Lincoln Project, former Republicans, and he's right, they are, and they're doing a dang good job. But that again begs the question: what the hell, people? Why are Never Trumpers the people who are effectively or coming close to being the most effective at actually punching back at the people who are punching at us progressive liberals? Who knows? What he points out, I think, rightly so, is that without a clear, organized, well-funded, now obviously not funded by Russia, like our friends in the manosphere, but well-funded media infrastructure, liberals have no or little to no hope of countering the media messaging that has largely been unchallenged for over a decade. Now, little bit of a history lesson. In 2005, prior to that, the national elections, Democratic Party decimated. 2004, Howard Dean founded PAC. He got some national attention. 2005, in February of that month, if I remember correctly, Howard Dean was elected chair of the Democratic National Committee. He started and championed what he called a 50-state strategy. Regardless of whether Democrats were strong in a particular district or not, he said, I don't care. We go into every district in every state and we pitch our message. If we're not going to fight, if we're not going to have a voice, then we have no business saying that we're a national party. It doesn't matter whether we win, lose, or draw. We go in there and we fight and we push our message. That's what he said. And you know what? The Democrats took back the House in 2006. And we had a decade of Democratic leadership in the House. Eventually, we took back the Senate. And then we had 8 years of Obama. It's that 50-state strategy, that going into every place and fighting tooth, claw, nail for every vote, that worked. Regardless of whether you were seen by a pollster as competitive, regardless of whether that was the case or not, if it was a district, you went into there and you said your message and you made your case. Period. That idea of a competitive 50-state strategy, I think that's an effective model. And I think a media equivalent of that strategy might be something we can do in this particular case. So in media markets where there is an unchallenged manosphere, we go in every single market. Now, obviously, that's why we need to have a well-funded, well-coordinated media infrastructure behind it. And that needs to be, as Keith Olbermann was pointing out, that needs to be set up first. And there is no interest in setting that up first. But that's what needs to be set up. And once that gets set up, then we can have a kind of a competitive footing to go forward on. And we'll get back to this later. I have a metaphor for you, an analogy, so to speak, that I think you'll like. Okay, so now let's go and talk about the Jonosphere, so to speak, Jon Stewart. So, Jon's monologue from last night focused mostly on the current critiques, autopsies, so to speak, from the Democratic lib talking heads. And he noted, rightly so, that those talking heads were the same ones who were saying, ooh, it's so close, it's so close, it's so close. Well, the election didn't end up being so close, did it? It seems like Republicans are on the verge of also capturing the House of Representatives. Not so sure. By the publishing of this video, they might have actually done so. It's not clear yet, but we'll see. Now, they were certain it would be close. Well, it wasn't so close. So he asked a simple question. If they were wrong then, what the hell makes them right now? And why should we trust their analysis of what went wrong? And it seems that person after person after person after person seems to have the rather unique take that the problem is that Democrats were too woke. And this is crystallized by a recent op-ed piece by Maureen O'Dowd, where she essentially says that we lost the election because we were too woke. I don't know what that means. Honestly, I swear to God, I do not know what that means. I'm caffeinated enough. Look, I am naturally white. I have so much caffeine I'm turning brown. What does too woke mean? I don't know. Yes, we have a language issue, we have a communication issue. But woke is not the way that you communicate that. As Jon Stewart rightly pointed out last night, that would be a legitimate criticism. Sure. If the Democrats actually bothered to run on a woke agenda, which they did not. Again, the Democrats, nationwide, district by district, did not run on a woke agenda. Again, the Democrats have snatched defeat from the jaws of victory, because that's what we do as a party, and they learned the wrong lesson. Now here is where Jon and Keith They need to push their bets together. Now, Jon, I need you to roll over, apologize to Keith. Keith, I want you, my older brother, I want you to roll over and say that you're sorry to Jon for those mean words you said about him on your podcast. Because we have to entertain the possibility that a path forward might necessitate the two of you finding a way to work together. But I digress. I'm just floating that as an idea. But I digress. Now, as Jon noted last night, the Dems did not run on a woke agenda. They did not. But voters thought they did. In fact, so ingrained is this idea that they did, that even Maureen O'Dowd thought they did. Does that mean that certain people said this, said that, said that, said this? Yes, of course, you can pick and choose little things to support your argument. But as a national or individual or a strategy, no, they did not. So why did people think that they did? Jon, the answer to that question is Keith. It's the manosphere. That point, that woke has been coming for you, has been bombarding voters for over a decade. The liberals are coming for you. They're coming for your cats. They're coming for your dogs. They're coming for your children's genitalia. They are going to force things upon you that you've never seen because they're un-American, they're ungodly, and they're going to shove their woke agenda down your fucking throats. Yeah, well, of course, nothing's farther from the truth. But, as a psychologist, I have to admit that fear is a particularly effective, short-term motivator. Furthermore, that fear was multiplied exponentially because, one, it was fed unrelentingly and compounded virtually daily in the manosphere, and two, that feeding, that gasoline that was poured on it, there was no counterattack. There was no counter-narrative. And let me be clear, there wasn't even an attempt at a counter-narrative. The liberals stuck their fingers in their ears and went, la 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 la, I can't hear you, I can't hear you. And guess what? It turns out that is not a particularly effective political strategy. The decade-long stoking of fear, division, intolerance benefited from and was tacitly approved of and supported by liberals not fighting back. And I promised you an analogy. Here it is. From one of my favorite movies. Imagine, if you will, Rocky Balboa. He's standing in the middle of the ring. It's round one. And he's letting Apollo Creed just pound the loving shit out of him. His hands are by his side. He's got a smile on his face. In those star-spangled trunks of his. He's thinking to himself, everything is going to be fine. Truth. Justice. The American way. They are on my side. Now you tell me. You tell me. You've got lefts, you've got rights, you've got uppercuts. They're just pounding Rocky. Does Rocky have a fighting chance? Does he? Does he? Really? Just standing there doing nothing? Getting pounded by Apollo? Because that's what has been going on for the last 10 years. And you wonder why we lost. So, Doc Dave, what's the take-home point? What, if anything, can we do? Well, first of all, just note that both Jon and Keith are right. And from my perspective, spoiler alert, to a large extent, they're usually both right. 1. This election was not lost because of wokeism. Let's get that out of our collective party's head right now. At its simplest level, if we boil everything down to the simplest, most distilled message from each party, one party said, "I'll take care of you." And the other party said, "I'm gonna fight for you." Which party won? Point 2. You can autopsy all you like, but the people doing the autopsy, they're the ones who were wrong about it in the first place. So trust them all you want, they're still probably going to be wrong. Point 3. Any path forward must include a well-funded, structured media operation nationwide to counter the manosphere, market to market to market, person to person to person. And 4, we don't move forward till we start actually punching back. That's it, my friends. Ciao for now. Love ya.